This is the 2023 Kia Niro Hybrid. It's in the SX trim level, which in Canada is technically the highest available option. You're going to find the Niro as a traditional hybrid, a plug-in hybrid, and as a fully electric vehicle, so there are a ton of different options that are available. A few key things though. It's strictly going to be available front-wheel drive, so it doesn't matter if you're looking traditional hybrid, fully electric, whatever the case may be. You're not going to find this thing available all-wheel drive whatsoever. If you are looking for a Kia that's all-wheel drive, you could technically look at the Kia Seltos, which is available, but the Seltos is not available hybrid or as an electric yet. Who knows? But we're going to dive into this car and unpack everything you need to know. If you're looking for a build link for this specific vehicle, you can find that down in the description. You can find technical walkthroughs down there as well. So if you want to know how to use the steering wheel cluster, the media screen, things like that, you'll find them down there, as well as the contact information for Durham Kia, who were nice enough to lend this vehicle to me for the afternoon to shoot the video for you guys today. Looking at the wheels inside of this thing, you're going to find the Niro with either 16s, 17s, or 18-inch wheels, depending on which trim level of the vehicle that you're in and which version of the Niro that you're in. So we're looking at the regular hybrid, which means that we're looking at either 16s or 18s. And because this is the SX trim level, we're looking at an 18-inch wheel here with like an interesting kind of like black and metallic highlight throughout. It's kind of neat. But there are different styles that are available. Tons of aftermarket choices too, or you could just get these things hydro dipped or powder coated if you're looking for that difference. There's like a tiny little bit more, just a little bit more oomph. I'm kind of liking white and black cars a little bit more, or white on black like this, just because you can see how much it contrasts. There are going to be some different highlights throughout the vehicles too, so depending on which version of the Niro that you're in. Now that black highlight follows all the way throughout the lower part of the bumper, and we don't really have much of like a traditional grille. They are going for something very different with the front end of the Niro. When you look at different trim levels, it's going to be the difference of LED versus halogen headlamps. So there are different styles and options that are available. And then there are LED fogs available there as an option too. Again, depending on the trim level of the vehicle that you're in and which model that you're in on top of that. There is the forward sensing system and then a series of other technology that's available. You're going to get a lot of standard Kia technology. So you're going to have lane keep and lane follow assist. There is the forward sensing system. One thing you're not going to find inside of this is the full 360 monitor. So the surround monitor, like what we're going to find in things like the Sportage or the Telluride Carnival, etc. Still pretty loaded for what it is at the price point that it's sold at. Underneath the hood of this thing, just in hydraulics, which is great. And I did mention we've got a few different options with when we look at the Niro. So it's either going to be traditional hybrid, plug-in hybrid, or fully electric. So the way that it's going to look under the hood is going to depend on which version of the Niro that you're in. The regular hybrid and the plug-in hybrid are going to feature the same 1.6-liter engine. It's a non-turbocharged engine, pretty straightforward, but the big difference is going to be combined horsepower and torque. When we look at this, so the traditional hybrid, you're looking at 139 horsepower and 195 pound-feet of torque combined. And then the horsepower numbers get boosted a little bit when we look at the plug-in hybrid. Looking at charge times inside of the Niro, the traditional hybrid that we're looking at here is just going to charge up as you drive. The plug-in hybrid version of the vehicle supports level 1 or level 2 charging. Your level 1 charge time, roughly 12-ish hours. That's cut down to like 2 hours, so like 2.5 hours roughly on level 2. And the plug-in hybrid doesn't have support for the level 3 DC fast charging. So you're just looking at level 1 and level 2. Taking a peek at the electric version of the Niro, that thing supports level 1, 2, or level 3 charging with your charge times all over the place. Level 1 charging is obviously going to take the longest. It's 120 volts. You're looking at, I think it's like 55-hour charge time in order to go from 0 to 100. But, I mean, with a 400-kilometer range in the electric, not necessarily a bad thing, because unless you're driving crazy distances all the time, you can just leave yourself plugged in and trickle charge as you need it. Now, the range is going to be slightly affected if it's going to be in freezing weather, like if you're in Winnipeg where it's like minus 40 weather all the time. Your range is going to be affected, usually 20 to 30-ish%. So that's something to take into account. You just want to make sure you're following manufacturers' recommendations for maintaining these things, whether it's the hybrids or the electric version of the vehicle. just to make sure you're getting the best possible life out of your ride. Like at a very minimum, just make sure you're changing your oil to protect your investment here. Towards the back end of the Niro, we have a very interesting design choice for the brake lights. It's kind of neat. I kind of like it all at the same time. It's kind of funky looking. There's a little spoiler over top. And then because we're in the Niro, we also do have our rear wiper. And then standard technology, always going to have that backup camera. That's a North American safety standard. There is also the reverse park sensing system. So the beeping that we get as we back up, getting closer to obstacles. Not standard inside of the Niro, but it's available in pretty much every trim level of the vehicle in both Canada and the States, across all versions of the Niro on top of that. But there are a few cool things, like we do have the option for a smart liftgate inside of this thing, depending on the trim level of the vehicle that you're in. And the cool thing about the smart liftgate is that if you're walking up to the back of the vehicle with your fob on you, the liftgate's going to automatically open up. But regardless, I mean, if you've got the manual one, power one, whatever the case may be, just under the Kia badge here, we can push that. Up she goes. Looking at the cargo area of the Niro, this thing is actually surprisingly spacious. Like, it definitely reminds me of the Seltos. Pretty nice vehicle in and of itself. So you can find a review for the Seltos down in the description of the video. But this thing, like I said, plenty spacious, but there's not too much back here. Like off to the left-hand side, there's pretty much nothing. Same idea off to the right-hand side. You're not going to find much back here on the sides. There is the option for a cargo shield. So if you want to protect whatever's back here, you've got that option. And then popping this thing up, we do have our inflator kit. So you're not going to find a mini spare tire available as an option inside of the Niro, unfortunately. But you do have Kia roadside assistance that you could count on. So if you pop a tire, you run out of gas, whatever the case may be, you can just call Kia roadside assistance instead. But this is straightforward. Now the seats themselves are a 60-40 split, so 60 on the passenger, 40 on the driver's side. And we can easily fold down the seats over the top and then pushing down. But I mean, it opens it up pretty nicely. And this thing does have quite a little bit of cargo space too, which is great. And then one really interesting thing, with this part that we can lift up in the back, we could also slide it down. So it's like a multi-tiered level. So if you need a little bit of extra storage space in the back here, you would have that flexibility. I love Kia vehicles. A lot of them do this as an option. But if you need that extra little bit of space, like it's a few extra inches, but those extra inches do matter from a cargo perspective. But it is nice that we've got that available as an option. Filling up fuel inside of the Niro is straightforward. So just along our driver's side, we've got a cap system there. Doesn't matter if you're in the regular or the plug-in hybrid. Regular 87 gas is your minimum manufacturer's recommendation. There is going to be some optional technology on our side view mirrors. So we've got a few different choices, whether it's just traditional side view mirrors, side views with our LED turn signals, and then there also is power folding on top of that. So a few different options depending on which version of the Niro that you're in. There is the option for the blind spot monitoring system. So our side view mirror is going to highlight. There's a little kind of warning sign when somebody's entered the blind spot of the vehicle. Looking along the driver's side door, there's a matte highlight along the very top, and there's a glossy one right along the main part of the door that looks pretty sharp. There is the option for driver's seat memory. So depending on which trim level of the vehicle that you're in, we have two different memory profiles. Power folding side views, all of our base window controls, our unlock lock buttons, and our basic window buttons. Little handle there, and then a little bottle holder along the driver's side door. It's a little tight along that door though. There is the option for the Harman Kardon sound system inside of this one. So it's a 6-speaker bass system, and then the 7-speaker Harman Kardon sound system that we're looking at inside of the SX trim level of the vehicle. So audio availability is going to depend on which trim level you're in. We'll get to an audio test in just a little bit. By the left knee, there are a few different switches. So one to adjust the brightness of the cluster screen. There's a button for our power liftgate, one for a battery reset, and then our traction stability control. So we can toggle that system on or off. It doesn't matter which version of the Niro that you're in though. For the wheel itself, it is strictly going to be a manual telescoping. So just by our left knee, we can go forwards, backwards, up and down with it. One interesting thing is the way that the wheel is designed. It's very unique from the wheel that you'd see in other Kia vehicles. There's this like metallic highlight that follows all the way throughout like the middle part of the steering wheel down. It's kind of nice. Stick on the left-hand side is going to be for our lights. I honestly always just recommend to keep the lights in the auto setting though. It's the easiest one because it's automatically going to turn our lights on or off as necessary, just depending on how bright it is outside. Stick on the right side is going to be for our front windshield wipers. And then right in the tip of that stick, we can also adjust that in order to figure out what's going on with our rear wipers on top of that. We do have paddle shifters inside of this thing. And one of the benefits of the paddle shifters, especially when you look at the plug-in hybrid or the electric, is that we can drop down in order to really focus on regenerative braking. So it's very, very useful if you want to recharge as you're braking. It's a really useful system. I love how much technology is available standard inside of this thing though. Like, it's actually kind of ridiculous. So if we look along the left-hand side of the steering wheel, there is the smart cruise control system. So that's the adaptive cruise control. So if we set it, let's say at 100 kilometers an hour on the highway, car in front of you slows down, yours is automatically going to brake. If they pick up speed, change lanes, whatever the case may be, yours is going to pick right back up to your set speed again. If you want to walk through on how that system works, check down in the description of the video. I've put together a comprehensive walkthrough on that specifically. The button layout is slightly different in different Kia vehicles. We've got the lane keep assist and then the lane follow assist as well. So the lane keep assist is if we start to veer over into a lane without signaling, it's going to nudge us back into our lane, versus the lane follow assist or a lane centering system. It's literally going to steer for us, not fully self-driving, but if there's a bend in the road and we're not following it as we go, as long as the vehicle recognizes the lane markings, it's going to move the wheel for us. So we're going left, right, whatever the case may be. You got this kid screaming at you, you lose focus for a second, and it's going to automatically turn the wheel too, which is really, really neat. Standard technology inside of it. Then there's highway drive assist with an advanced highway drive assist that's based off of what's going on with speed sign recognition as well. So it's an amazing system. Along the right-hand side, we can change songs, radio stations. We can adjust our volume, answer or hang up on a phone call. We've got a custom button here. So if we wanted, or technically two, so there's a mode button and then a custom button to do different things that are all set up through the media screen. The cluster screen inside of this is nice, fully digital there, which looks pretty good. There are a few different style cluster screens that you're looking at inside of this. And then the multimedia screen across almost every trim level is going to be the 10.25 inch, which looks really, really nice. There's, I think it's the LX base in one model of the Niro that's going to have like the old school 8-inch instead. So the 8-inch is actually interesting because that one supports wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, versus this larger 10.25 inch is going to support wired Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. I think it's backwards like a little bit, but here nor there. So the larger 10.25 inch has factory navigation. The smaller one doesn't, but you could still hook up through your phone to use Google Maps, Apple Maps, or Waze through iPhones. And then Android, you're going to be able to use Google Maps right through that middle screen either way. So it doesn't matter if you're on the larger or the smaller screen, which is a nice thing. We've got our base home screen there. Shifting across, there is a hybrid mode. So we've got our fuel economy, electronic motor usage, etc. A few different basic things. Hopping back, our map, navigation, and the map is fairly responsive. So we've got pinch to zoom capabilities there, which is great. You can set multiple destinations and waypoints and things like that. We can easily hook up phones for Android Auto, Apple CarPlay. We've got media, notifications, and things like that. So very, very nice from that perspective. Radio button there in order to go between AM, FM, Sirius XM. If you had a USB stick with MP3s, we could also plug in there if we wanted to go that route. And then if you were hooked up over Bluetooth, we would also have that option for our audio on top of that. Shifting down, there's the 4-way blinkers there. Here is kind of neat. So along the side here, we can see that we've got all of our base controls for our volume rocker and things like that. So volume rocker, some base climate settings. And then we've got this button, but I'll show you what that does in just a second. So if we shoot across, we've got map, navigation, we've got a star button, so we can do a few different things. So it's essentially setting a custom button there. You've got the option to seek, radio button, media, setup, and then we've got different file options and tuning. But if we push this button, that's going to jump out of subject climate instead. So it's either going to be a climate, but look what it does here. So we've gone from volume power and file tune. We push this into options for our climate control settings instead. So if you want to have the driver passenger side set up for something different, you'd have that flexibility just by pushing the button here. And then it gives us a series of other climate control settings. So do we want our driver only mode? Do we want to adjust the fan speed? Do we want to go into the windshield face feet? Some sort of combination of all of the above. So it is kind of neat. And then we just button press to get back to our base setting screen there instead. So I love the design element of this. It's so basic, but so useful all at the same time. Moving down, 12-volt power point off to the left side. There's a traditional USB, USB Type-C, and then wireless charge pad. So if your phone supports wireless charging, that is available there as an option. Down from there, you are going to be push button start inside of this thing. So you can see there, we've got our push button start with like this nice design on it. It's pretty neat. Looking at the shifter inside of it, so we've got a park, reverse, neutral, drive, and then you can drop yourself down into a manual mode on top of that. So if you're in drive, you can just kind of shoot yourself over, back up, going into reverse. We've got our rear view mode, front parking sensors with the rear parking sensors. And I mean, obviously, if your car didn't have that option, you just wouldn't have the sensor showing up there as you go. There is the option for heated, ventilated first row seats, depending on the trim level of the vehicle that you're in. Heated steering wheel, and then shooting across. So we do have the auto hold setting there too. So with auto hold turned on, if we are in drive, we take our foot off the brake, the car is not moving. Really useful safety setting there. Across the other side, we've got our passenger side, heated, ventilated first row. The reverse sensing system, so that beeping that we get as we back up. If that drives you nuts, we do technically have the flexibility of being able to turn that system off if we wanted to. A hot button press in order to get into our camera there as well. Button press in order to get rid of it. Moving down, there is the electronic parking brake. But what I'm going to do, I want to give you a little audio test. So I've got a USB stick with some MP3s on it. So I'm just going to plug this one in as we go. And while it's loading up, going to go through a few other things. All right. Oh, would you look at that? Okay, hold on. So I'm going to go to half volume right now. Okay, that's half volume. Cranking it a bit. So I got to say, the audio inside of this thing, like it's really good. Like this is just a bass 7-speaker bass system, but it's Harman Kardon. That's why. The 6-speaker setup does sound pretty good. It's just the Harman Kardon, deeper bass. It just is a more immersive audio experience, which is nice. I mean, you heard it there. It's really, really good. And that's through USB. And that's one cool thing is the media screen supports so many things. We've got AM, FM, Sirius XM. You can hook up through Bluetooth. You can use USB sticks with MP3s on them. There are so many different options available. And then there are some cup holders, which, I mean, the cup holders are neat because we can push. There's 2 little push buttons there, and that's going to actually swing the cup holders open. Otherwise, it's just like a fully open area for storage instead, which is kind of nice. There is a little armrest with a teeny little bit of storage space. It's like a cute little tiny amount, but it is there. Up overhead, there is the option for the auto-dimming rear view mirror. You're pretty much getting that standard across the board, though. There's an tow mode, SOS mode, just in case. Few controls for our cabin lights. And then this thing also has sunroof. Really straightforward. And then to pop the roof open, just in between our light controls, we can push it. And that's going to create a little vent. So if we want to create a little cross breeze, we have to close it. And then we can open it up. Nice. So single button press opens it up most of the way. Secondary press opens it up that last teeny little bit. But it is pretty nice. And same idea, secondary is just a single button press in order to close it completely. But the sunroof inside of the Niro is not standard in all trim levels. It is going to be available in most trim levels of the vehicle. But because we're in the SX, it is going to be standard there. So I did mention the features that you get going to depend on if you're in the regular hybrid, the plug-in, or the electric, and then which trim level of that version of the vehicle that you're in. So it is all over the place looking at certain technology, certain features like the sunroof, heated, ventilated first row seats, and things like that. Fairly spacious. So I've got, hold on, let's lower the seat here a little bit. So I've got the driver's seat down as far down as it'll go. I've got 3.5, maybe 4 inches of headspace here. So not a ton of space, but still pretty respectable amount all at the same time. Realistically though, 4 inches of headspace. You're 6'4", 6'5". You'd probably be able to sit inside of this thing no problem. Yeah, this is good. I like it. And the seats are super comfortable inside of this thing. I even love the design of the headrest. It's honestly more of a sport bucket type of a seat instead. They did a really, really good job on the seat. I really like the seat. It would be cool if it hugged a little bit more, but you can't complain. This is nice. Inside of the Niro, you're going to find 3 different types of seats. So it's either going to be a traditional cloth seat, it's going to be a cloth and synthetic leather mix, or it's going to be a full synthetic leather, depending on the trim level of the vehicle that you're in. We're in the SX in Canada, which means that we're in a full synthetic leather seat here. And that means that we've also got, like I said, the heated ventilated option. But the seat feels nice, it looks nice. Having that heated ventilated option is also really, really good. Visor has a little business card holder built in. There's a vanity mirror, and there's a light, but the light is just over top, so we can easily turn that on off. And then this thing is also going to extend out. Look at that. Blocking all of the sun that might be hitting our face. If you're kind of torn between, do I look at the plug-in or the traditional hybrid? The plug-in is really beneficial because in Canada, like we're 55 kilometer-ish range, which we're 37 miles? I think if I did the math right, 37-ish miles range. So you can go fully electric mode in that. So, I mean, it is really nice to be able to go that route because having fully electric, if you work close to home, in theory, you never really have to use gas. You can just go into electric mode instead. So that is nice looking at the plug-in, so you really don't have to use gas that often. The traditional hybrid is if you just want better fuel economy. So it's going to be a matter of personal preference. You're obviously looking at a couple dollars more if you look at the plug-in versus the traditional hybrid, but you have to balance that out with how much money you're going to be saving in fuel at the same time. So there are a lot of kind of factors that go into play there. But this is a 2-row vehicle, and I've got the driver's seat set up for myself being 6 feet. So let's hop back into that second row and see what's going on space-wise. I did mention, so I've got the driver's seat set up for myself being 6 feet tall, and I have a great amount of knee space, good amount of foot space, and like even head space back here is kind of surprising. Like 3.5, almost 4 inches of head space. Really useful. The big thing is just because like I'm taller, slightly wider shoulders, so I wouldn't want to get stuck in the middle seat. It would be like a little bit tight, like airplane seat style, but there is 5 seats inside of this vehicle. So it's just really whoever gets stuck in that middle seat if people are a bit bigger. But if you have younger kids, babies, whatever the case may be, you're covered off. There are all the anchor points and top tether points and things like that. So if you have front-facing, rear-facing child seats, you're not going to have an issue in this thing whatsoever. And it is nice because we've got a 60-40 bench, so we could fold the seats down if we wanted to. I like the style there. So that same glossy highlight we saw along the first row door follows through the second row. Base window control buttons. Some versions of the Niro will also have heated second row seats for the outboard seats. So this middle seat is never going to be heated. But if your version of the Niro had the heated outboard seats, there would be a button right near the window control. There are a few cup holders there. Same thing, they are fairly small cup holders, but it's like traditional size. You'll see it in pretty much every car. It's actually rare to find those like bigger full-size cup holders, but here or there. But the seat, very similar to the first row. The second row seat is actually very comfortable too. This is nice. It is a synthetic leather because we're in the SX trim level, but the seat, like I said, is really, really nice. A butt wiggle test here. It's good. I still can't believe like the amount of headspace in this second row. It's like I'm 6 feet tall, and usually the second row seats are like a little uncomfortable. One interesting thing with a lot of Kia vehicles is the way that they have their second row power points. So there aren't any just behind the armrest, but if we look on the inside of the driver passenger seat, we've got some USB Type-C on both driver passenger seats too, which is really neat. So there are a few power points in the front, a USB Type-A and a USB-C, and then 2 USB Type-C back here as well. Up overhead, little cabin control lights. Off to the driver's side, there's a handle with a clothing hook. On the passenger side, though, it's strictly going to be just a grab handle instead. So we do have 4 total grab handles, 2 in the first row, 2 in the second row, but the clothing hook is strictly going to be on the driver's side. The seats themselves are locked into place, so there's no bar in between our legs, so we can't slide it forwards, backwards. There's no way to recline them either. So they are locked in place, but I mean, with the seat locked back here, I still do have a ton of space, and like I said, it is fairly comfortable all at the same time. If you're in the market for a Niro, Durham Kia has you covered. As I mentioned, you can find their contact info down in the description of the video. But if you found this one useful, give it a thumbs up, share it with someone if you think they might find it helpful, And until I see you next time, take care.